Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, I have a brand new godlike to not quite video for you all. And for those of you who don't remember or are new to the channel, a godlike to not quite is just my own personal version of a tier video. And I am going to be covering all 26 of the Pixar movies. So Disney and Pixar's latest, Lightyear, released in theaters this past weekend, marking the 26th film in the animation studio's catalog. And although most people are probably just doing regular rankings, I did a ranking for the last two Pixar movies that released, Turning Red and Luca. So I figured since I would only be adding Lightyear and Turning Red only came out like 3 months ago, not that much was going to change and it wasn't really going to be worth it. But then I realized that I had never done a tier video for the Pixar movies, so why not do that instead? Before I start tiering these movies up, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my godlike to not quite videos, so be sure to check that out and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's start tiering it up. Alright folks, so I'd like to start things off by just addressing something you might have already picked up on. If you can't tell, I have a bit of a cold or virus of some sort right now, so I may sound a little bit stuffier than usual. I may have to clear my throat a little bit more, and for that I apologize, but as they always say, the show must go on, so here we are continuing to do videos anyway. Now what I'd actually like to start off with is what I normally start off with when I do these tier videos, and that is just taking you through my tiers, because they're named a little differently just to make them a little more me. So firstly, up here you have the godlike tier in the red at the very top, which replaces the traditional god tier or the S tier. Replacing the A tier, you have awesome sauce. Replacing the traditional B tier, you have good as gold. Replacing the C tier, you have quite alright. Replacing the D tier, you have super meh. And then way down at the bottom, replacing the F tier, is rock bottom. Now, as per usual too with these videos, they are very just on the spot. I find that's the way to get my best, most natural reaction to these movies, seeing the things that I remember the most. If it isn't a Pixar movie that I've watched 1,000,001 times, it's just a way to, to see the just raw, natural, first thing that comes to mind reactions of mine. So we're going to start off right away. We might as well hop right into it. So we have Brave is the first movie up on our list for today. Honestly, Brave is a bit of a tough one, because I know that I like Brave more than most people. When I first watched it, because it took me forever to watch it, I enjoyed it a lot more than I had expected to, but at the same time, that was a little while ago, and I haven't really had a desire to watch it since. I remember that I loved the lead character. I loved the dynamic between her and her mother. I thought it had a genuinely terrifying villain. I thought that all the Scottish lore and things like that worked really well for the movie, but given that I haven't really had a desire to rewatch it, I feel like I can't really put it up too high, because if it was a Pixar movie that I truly loved, then I would probably watch it on repeat like the Pixar movies that I love. So I think we'll start off with quite alright for Brave. It is a good movie, don't get me wrong, even if it's in the C tier. There's a lot going for it, but there are some negatives, and it just isn't quite as memorable as I think some of Pixar's other offerings are. Then we have A Bug's Life. This one I'll put right in good as gold. That usual B tier. I grew up loving A Bug's Life, but then I took like a decade plus off from watching it. Like, I had the VHS, I almost ran through the tape, if you even know what that means, for back with the gold VCR and VHS days. But after I didn't watch VHSs anymore, I don't think I watched A Bug's Life again up until like a year or two ago. So it took me a really long time. When I rewatched it, I remember just how much I loved it, but it's still, like I said, when you take that much time off, it's hard for me justifying putting it in the awesome sauce or godlike tier, even though I personally have a lot of fond memories with it. Now we have Cars. This might be a controversial one. I would actually even consider putting Cars in the godlike tier. I love Cars so much. I think it is the most underrated and overhated movie in Pixar's entire catalog. There's so many people that will put this first Cars movie at like the bottom of their ranking or in the bottom 5 or just somewhere in the middle. I don't agree with that at all. I adore Cars. This is one of those Pixar movies that as soon as the credits roll, I can start playing it from the very beginning again. I love it so much. I love the story. I love the idea. I love the voice cast. I love the soundtrack. All of it is amazing. I love Cars with my whole heart. I don't understand how so many people bash this movie and overlook it, but I absolutely love it. Now we move on to Cars 2. Yeah, it's going in rock bottom. Look, even though I don't think it's like an F grade movie, like if I were to review it, I'd probably sit it somewhere around like a 5 or a 6, where if you were going to do letter grades, that might be like a D or a D minus or something like that. It's not really like an F movie, but when it comes to Pixar, and that's kind of the way I like to do these tier videos, is, you know, is it rock bottom for the studio? Like, or, you know, if it's the MCU movies, is it rock bottom for the MCU? Is it rock bottom for Pixar? And I think it's the worst that Pixar has to offer. I really do. It's the only Pixar movie that I would score below probably a 7 out of 10. I really don't care for Cars too much at all. If they would have just focused on the World Grand Prix, I think we could have actually had a really good movie. But for whatever reason, they decided to make Mater the main character. That got old and annoying really fast. I did like that there was friction between Lightning and Mater. The spy stuff I think could have been used for a completely different original movie, and that would have worked even better too. It was just a jumble of too many ideas that didn't mesh very well together, and it just ended up being Pixar's first real, and in my mind probably only, major dud. Cars 3 doesn't quite reach the heights of the original, but it's also not anywhere near as bad as Cars 2. I remember thinking this was almost a return to form. It just got back to basics. It got back to racing. I liked the old school feel of it, how Lightning was like, you know, the old dog with, you know, all this new technology and things like that, and the odds were stacked against him. He had to go back to basics and learn from scratch and stuff. I really enjoyed that aspect of this movie. No, I don't think it's one of Pixar's best offerings, but I do think it was a pretty good effort to try and get back in the good graces for those like me who really do enjoy the first Cars movie. Coco, that's a tough one. Coco, I'll put it in awesome sauce. It definitely could have went in godlike, and I did consider it for a split second there because I do truly believe it is one of Pixar's best, but it's not one of my favorites, if that makes sense. Like, I'd probably give that movie like a 9 out of 10, maybe even like a 9.5 or something. I think Coco is just stupendous. I think it's amazing. It is a stellar movie. I love the animation. I love the story that it tells. The ending brings a tear to my eye every single time I watch it. It's just so unique and totally different, and I love the exploration of the Mexican culture and things like that, and I think it was an absolute hit. However, it's not one of the Pixar movies that I have watched time and time again, like the others that you will see that will end up in that godlike tier. The Good Dinosaur, it's in the same boat as Brave, that I like it more than probably most, but I will put it in super meh. I like the idea. I like that they went for something really different, that they kind of put this spin, and the human characters are the ones that are kind of voiceless and don't really talk and stuff. I think the story is really heartwarming and really touching, and there are actually moments in this movie that really, really got me good and got me deep. But here's the thing, just like Brave, it's not really all that memorable. I'm looking at it now and I'm like, it probably deserves Superman. It's definitely towards the bottom of my ranking when it comes to Pixar movies. It's just, yeah, it's just a little forgettable, that's all. Like, it's one that, although I watched it one time, and again, just like Brave, I watched it like years after it released, I really did enjoy it when I watched it. But since then, which was probably like 2 years ago, I haven't had any desire or urgency to rewatch it at all. I don't know if I will ever rewatch it. I mean, I'm sure I'll rewatch it at some point, but it's not one that, like a Pixar movie, when I'm in the mood to watch a Pixar movie, it's like not even on my radar. So that's kind of why it ends up in the Superman, even though I would probably still score it like a 7 out of 10. I do still really enjoy it, and I think it has a lot of good things going for it. However, it just is a little forgettable and not one that I'd rewatch on a constant basis. This one, however, The Incredibles, absolutely going in godlike. You probably knew it as soon as you saw it that was going in godlike. Look, it's the Fantastic Four movie that never was. This is all we need in a Fantastic Four movie, and it would just absolutely blow up the box office. Critics, audiences, everyone would love it because everyone loved The Incredibles. Everyone loves The Incredibles. Not only do we have an amazing family cast of characters with unique and dynamic powers, and they bicker and argue like a real family, but they're also always there for one another. I love it. I really do think it's just the great family dynamic that really sells this movie. On top of that, though, they also have a fantastic villain as well. I love the world that it's set in. Of course, you have Frozone as well. So many quotable moments, so many big bombastic action sequences for an animated movie. It's just so good. And again, this is one of those that's like top tier Pixar, hence being in the top tier. I love it. I've seen it so many times. I can never get enough of it. I never grow tired of it. So absolutely, The Incredibles is going in godlike. Incredibles 2, I'd probably also put that in the quite alright tier. We waited, what, at the time? What was it, like 15 years or something? 12 years, 13? It was a lot of years that we waited for this sequel. And in the time that we got this movie, we had how many other sequels? We had like 2 Toy Story sequels. We had, I'm pretty sure, did Finding Dory come out before Incredibles 2? We had maybe both Cars sequels. We got a lot of sequels before the one that we probably wanted the most, which was The Incredibles 2. It does have a lot of things going for it, absolutely. I love that they expanded the world and the lore of superheroes. I love that Elastigirl was the main focus. I love that everyone pretty much stayed the same age, so it really does feel like it takes place like just after the events of the original. However, the big villain reveal I saw from the very beginning of the movie, I didn't really care for the villain much at all either, and for whatever reason they decided to try to give everyone in the theater a seizure with this villain. I don't really know what they were thinking, so there's a lot of good still in there going for it. However, because the hopes were so high and the hype train was full steam ahead after over a decade of waiting, it does definitely feel like a bit of a letdown, and that's kind of why it ends up in that quite alright tier for me. Inside Out, I'd probably also go awesome sauce for the same reason of Cars and Coco. I think it is top tier Pixar, but it's also not one that I've seen a ton of times like the others that you'll see in this godlike tier. And maybe it's because some of them, like Coco and Inside Out, are like newer Pixar, not like new, but you know what I mean. Like The Incredibles was 2004, Inside Out was what, like 2014, 2015. So maybe it's because I haven't had as much time to sit with it and as much time to rewatch it. However, I only rewatch it like every so often. I've probably only seen it since I saw it in the theaters like 3 or 4 times, maybe around then. But The Incredibles I've seen like 30 times. So the godlike one is reserved for the Pixar movies that I've seen dozens of times and still love as much as the first time I watched them. Whereas the awesome sauce tier is more so reserved for the Pixar movies that I think could potentially be godlike or are like right there, but I maybe just haven't seen them enough. Or in the case of Cars, there are just a few little things that I wish could have been tweaked that could have pushed it into the godlike tier, because I have seen Cars a lot of times. But yeah, for now, I think awesome sauce would suffice for Inside Out. Luca, man, Luca is a tough one to place. I've only seen it the one time, and I remember thinking that it was pretty forgettable. Like, it was just alright. I remember when I released my ranking the day after Luca came out, I put it in like the second last or third last place, and I had a lot of people really not happy with me on that one. I just thought there wasn't a ton to look back on. You know what I mean? There wasn't a lot of memorable moments. There wasn't really a lot of memorable characters. The main thing I remember when I look at this movie is like the Silencio Bruno and stuff like that. I thought it was a cute little movie. I like how they went with a kind of a more different animation style. I love the exploration of, I believe it was Italian culture and whatnot, and I could be wrong in saying that. If I am, I apologize. Like I said, these videos are primarily unedited. It's just kind of me spewing on nonsense and just going, like I said, it's just these natural reactions, right? It's just the off the top of my head first thing that comes to mind. But yeah, there are things like, again, super meh, anything in the super meh tier or above is still getting like a 7 out of 10. I freaking love Pixar. So there still is a lot of good things in this movie, and I like that it was a bit different from the norm when it comes to Pixar, because if you look at it, a lot of their animation looks relatively the same, especially like their human characters and stuff like that. So this was something a little bit different for them, a little bit outside of the norm, and in their last few movies, they've really tried to explore different cultures, and I've really appreciated that, as well as I'm sure people from those cultures have really appreciated that. I like Luca, don't love it. Think it's pretty forgettable. Again, I say don't know if I'll ever watch it again. I will watch it again at some point. It's Pixar, but at the same time, it's not one that's at like the top of my list. Like, I have to watch it again. Monsters Inc. I don't know why I do that every time. I do like my lips smacking. And it's because I'm trying to like clear my throat a little bit without clearing my throat because that's pretty loud. Godlike for Monsters Inc. This is hands down like one of my favorite animated movies of all time. Probably one of my favorite movies of all time altogether. I love the first Monsters Inc. Well, I guess it's not the first because the second one's Monsters University, but I love Monsters Inc. Everything about it. I love Mike and Sully. I love Randall as the villain. I love Boo. I love the world of the monsters. I love the twists and turns in this movie. I love the darker aspects. I think the comedy works wonders. Everything about this movie, I simply adore. It is easily a 10 out of 10 movie for me. No doubt about it. Monsters Inc. straight in the godlike tier. Monsters University, I'd probably go good as gold for Monsters University. Maybe quite all right. There might be some swapping done at my final tier list when I'm done the video and kind of looking through it before we sign off and stuff. But I think Monsters University is another one of those movies that gets way more hate than it deserves. I've watched Monsters University a good few times, and although no, it's not as good as Monsters Inc., I think it's definitely one of the better Pixar sequels. I think it's one that took the idea and then rather than just doing the same thing again, like say Finding Dory for instance, it really tried to do something different. It was a prequel that showed how they essentially became, you know, the top scare team duo, and then you get the events of Monsters Inc., and now we have Monsters at Work, which, you know, is the successor to Monsters Inc., like the true sequel. This is the prequel, and I like how they expanded the world, expanded the lore, gave us more unique, colorful characters. Like, I love their house, their frat house, I guess. I love all those little characters in there. Gives us many more monsters, and again, it shows how, where Mike and Sully started, and then how that relationship kind of grew and blossomed into this beautiful best friendship and this partnership. So it's something that I think a lot of people don't really respect enough and don't really give enough props to. It's definitely one of the better Pixar sequels, I think. Then we go to Finding Nemo, and again, that one is also going straight to the top. Godlike, no doubt in my mind whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen. Finding Nemo is easily one of the best movies that Pixar has on offer of their massive 26 movie catalog. Look, Finding Nemo, again, I can say this for all of my favorite Pixar movies. I love the leading duo of Dory and Marlin. I think their dynamic works great. How, you know, Marlin starts off as this just overprotective, overbearing father. He's not very jokey. He's very serious. He's very antsy, very panicky. And then Dory, just this loosey-goosey, loving life, just trying to live her best every single day, along with the short-term memory loss. And then you have so many other characters. Of course, you have Nemo, and then the whole fish tank crew and things like that, and their thing going on. And it's just such an epic and profound and beautiful journey from start to finish. Not only the character arcs, I think, are just immaculate, but I love the world that it's set in. It's fish that can talk, and it's something that's so simple, but it really does get you in all the right places, and it truly is something magnificent, and I adore Finding Nemo. Finding Dory, however, I would say probably quite alright is okay for Finding Dory. It's pretty much the same thing as Finding Nemo, except this time it's like Marlin and Nemo trying to find Dory, and she's at like this water park. So I like that it's not just like, oh, she's in a fish tank again or something like that. It is a little different. I like the whole water park setting. Or like the aquarium or whatever it is. It's like a mix of things, I guess. I like the new characters we get to meet. I think a lot of the comedy works. I think this movie still has a ton of heart. I love the ending where Dory meets with her parents again and things like that. There's still a lot of good in here, and it still does recapture some of that magic from the original, but it just doesn't quite reach the heights because, again, it's one of those things that it's just more of the same, and I think I would have liked something a little bit different, but I guess with a title called Finding Dory, we're supposed to find Dory, so I don't really know what else they were going to do, but regardless, that's how I feel about it, and it's going quite alright. Onward, good as gold. I think Onward is another one of those Pixar movies that is very different from what they've normally done. I mean, when has Pixar ever done like a full-blown fantasy movie? That's right up my alley. I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. Those are my favorite genres, sci-fi and fantasy. So the fact that I saw that Pixar was not only doing a full-blown fantasy movie, but that it was starring Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, and their dynamic is what really sells this movie. Not just the actors and their voice work, but the brotherhood. You know, being an older sibling myself, this movie really got me, especially towards the end. And that's what it's about, right? It's all about family, it's all about siblings, and it's just really this huge, amazing, epic journey that is really unlike anything Pixar has ever done. Now, is it perfect? Is it flawless? No, absolutely not. I definitely have a few gripes with the movie, things that I wish were done a little bit better, but overall, they really did dive deep into the fantasy genre, and we got a lot of really cool stuff in here, and there's a lot of comedy, and again, with our two leads, not only do they work well as actors, and their dynamic there was great, but the brotherhood is really what sells you on this movie, them leaning on each other, and picking up for what the other lacks, and just their love for one another despite their differences, and the mom as well, and there's fantastic, as well as the story with the father. All of it really does tug on my heartstrings and get me in all the right spots. So even though I have my flaws with it, I do still think it's definitely up in that upper half of Pixar's catalog, right? If you see the split right in the middle here, it's like 3 and 3. So I definitely do think it's in that upper half of what Pixar has to offer. Ratatouille or whatever. People make fun of the way I say it sometimes. Oh, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm so stuck because I put Cars in awesome sauce, but Ratatouille, however you want to say it. Oh man, this is a really tough one. I think, oh man, I think I'm gonna put it in godlike. I'm looking at the rest of the movies and I'm like, geez Louise, it's tough. I think I will put Ratatouille in the godlike tier. It's a tough call because I probably love Cars just as much as I love Ratatouille. They're so close. They are neck and neck. And I really honestly could also put Cars in that godlike tier, but I really also could put Ratatouille in the awesome sauce tier. I think Ratatouille just has that extra little something that would put it above Cars. Like, there are moments in Cars I think that are a little bit boring, that are a little bit too slow, and I think that's what bumps it down ever so slightly, whereas Ratatouille, I love the setting. It's probably my favorite setting of any Pixar movie. They do the whole Paris thing and everything just so well. I love the music in the movie, and it's just such a different concept. It's a rat that can cook. And it sounds so simple, but like, would you have thought of it if Ratatouille didn't exist? Probably not. And he also uses a human like a puppet by pulling his hair and things like that. I love our little villain that he's the former head chef. I love all the other characters in it. I love Ego too as like our other kind of big bad of sorts, and then his journey that he goes on and realizing that, you know, he became a critic for food, but it all started because of his love for food. There's just so much to adore in Ratatouille. It is just such a wholesome journey, and I think Patton Oswalt as our lead character, Remy, is truly one of Pixar's standouts when it comes to their lead characters. So yeah, you know what, I'm pretty confident in putting Ratatouille in the godlike tier. Soul, this is another one that has potential, I think, to definitely go higher. I think that Soul is, you know, for better lack of a term, one of Pixar's most soulful journeys. It really is something that I watched on Christmas Day when they released it on Disney Plus during the whole pandemic and lockdowns and everything. We watched it on Christmas Day, and it broke me. It was such a beautiful and elegantly told story, and I love jazz music to begin with, and I love the music in this movie so much. I love the characters, and I love the little journey that our two leads go on, and the discovery of, you know, sort of, it deals with something that is really a darker topic, like death, of course, and as well as a bigger topic that we can't really explain, like life, and it delivers it, because Pixar's it's kids' movies, it delivers it in a way that's easily digestible and explainable to kids, but still enjoyable, and has a lot of really profound messages for adults. And that's something that I really do applaud Soul for, because it's one of those movies that, you know, we don't really talk about enough. Like, people just watch it and they're like, oh yeah, it's a kids movie, it's good, it's great, yeah, we'll throw it on. But I think there's more in here. There's a lot more in Soul to dissect. There's a lot more to take from it. There's some really heavy-duty themes in there that I don't think people really address quite enough. And I've only watched it the one time, and that's why I put it in Good as Gold right now. But the one time was enough to really leave an impact on me. And I think after multiple rewatches and as the years go on, I can definitely see it bumping its way higher and higher up the ranking. The first Toy Story, I mean, if you know me personally, or if you've been following this channel for a while, you will likely know that Toy Story is not only my favorite Pixar movie, it is my favorite animated movie, and it is one of my favorite movies of all time in general. It is in my top 10 movies altogether of all time that I have ever seen. I love this movie so much. I don't know if there's any movie that I've ever watched more than Toy Story. I don't know if there's a movie that's ever affected me more than Toy Story. This movie helped me a lot growing up. I had it on VHS, I've had it on DVD, Blu-ray, 4K. I've seen it more times than I could ever possibly count. And not only did I grow up watching it anyway as a little kid, but I was my parents weren't necessarily the best at timing. So I had my first sibling when I was 7.5 years old, and then my next sibling when I was 9.5. So going from being an only child for almost 8 full years to having to share everything and having obviously more of a focus on the baby, it was really tough to digest and come to terms with as a kid. But Woody goes through pretty much the exact same thing in Toy Story, so this movie really helped me in more ways than I could probably ever even realize or describe or articulate than I am right now. Not only do I just love it as an animated movie, I always laugh, I always cry, I love Buzz and Woody, I love the rest of the toys, I think I love Andy as a character, and I understand everything he's going through with the moving because I've moved, I went through 3 different elementary schools as well, so I have that part. I can really relate to Andy as well. And I think that Sid is just a sick and twisted and amazing villain, even if his animation is horrendous by today's standards and that dog is butt ugly. But Toy Story, yeah, there's just, I could sit here for an hour straight and talk about Toy Story, just how much I love it. And you know what's almost as good as the first Toy Story? The second Toy Story. Toy Story 2, again, so many messages in there. There's messages of self-discovery. There's a message of growing and learning and discovering who you are. There's so much, again, to dissect in this movie as well. And since it came out, I think it was, 95 and 99, I want to say, or 2000? I'm not really sure right now. I got a head cold, man. My head's spinning in circles right now. But I grew up with both of these movies, watching them pretty much evenly, and I love the second Toy Story almost as much as I love the first Toy Story, so you know that it's pretty good then. So yeah, again, a lot of those messages, they really helped me growing up. They really helped me to kind of become who I am, I think, in some ways, even though that might sound a bit dramatic. As someone who, again, being an only child for 8 years, that's what I did with a lot of my time, was watch movies and play video games and things like that. So these movies did really have an impact on me in more ways than I realized. And I think even the more I watch them now as an adult, I discover more ways and more things that I kind of took from them and carried with me throughout my life. So yeah, Toy Story 2 also godlike. Toy Story 3, however, is going in awesome sauce. Is it the perfect ending? Yes, absolutely. It is quite possibly my favorite movie ending of all time. It is perfect, and I think that the story should have ended there, which we'll touch on because Toy Story 4 and Lightyear are up next. It's not that I necessarily don't like it as much as Toy Story 1 and 2, like, I guess it kind of is that. I just think it's a little bit below them, I guess, and I can't really articulate why. Maybe it's because I just don't quite I don't really love what they kind of did with Buzz in the latter half of the movie, and even though I like Lotso as a villain, I just find that the toys get spread a bit too thin, and I don't always love the way that the story plays out as a whole. However, I do enjoy I think the ending, again, is just absolutely immaculate. It's fantastic. It's stellar. It's one of the best, if not the best, movie ending of all time, in my humble opinion, and it was the perfect conclusion to the Toy Story trilogy. But the movie as a whole package, and even though I'm saying there's like little negatives with it, I'd still give this movie probably like a 9 out of 10. I freaking love it. But I just don't think it's quite as good as the others in the godlike tier. Toy Story 4, it has grown on me a little bit. Like the tiniest little bit, it has grown on me. It doesn't come anywhere near the first 3, in my own humble opinion. I apologize if you love Toy Story 4. There are some people out there that it's their favorite Toy Story, or they think it's just as good as the first 3, and that's totally cool. I'm not knocking you by any means. Like what you like, love what you love. Totally cool. I'm not saying you're wrong or anything like that. But Toy Story 4, and I understand too that movies don't have to justify to me why they should exist or whatever, but no matter how many times I watch it, and I enjoy elements of it, I will always, again, I just explained how much I love 1, 2, and 3. I will always gladly accept and enjoy any new adventures I can get with these characters. They're some of my favorite characters of all time. But this movie just continues to feel wholly and completely unnecessary. I don't really know why they did it. Toy Story 3 had, again, arguably the best movie ending of all time, best trilogy ending ever possibly as well. And then they went and did this, and I feel like it completely just takes away from the ending of Toy Story 3. Like, Toy Story 3 would have just been it. That would have been perfect. But and even the messages that, like, Woody learns about, like, letting go and letting Andy go and then being there for Bonnie, and that's what, like, the whole movie starts off as, is just, that's what happens. It's important to be there for your kid. So what does he do? He abandons the rest of the toys and stays with Bo Peep to live at a playground. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't agree with it. With the characters' arc and journey between the first 3 movies, it just feels very out of character for me personally, and a lot of people disagree with that. A lot of people can rant at me for an hour and say why it's actually the natural conclusion to Woody's arc, and some people say that the trilogy is still the trilogy and this is more of an epilogue, and I can see it like that, and honestly picturing it like that makes it more enjoyable, that it's kind of more of an epilogue than it is actually like a 4th Toy Story, I guess. Like, you know, it's the trilogy and then the epilogue. But regardless, I just don't think it was a necessary movie. I think it was totally and completely unnecessary. Still has a lot of elements that are super enjoyable, but it has grown on me, though. I really used to not care for it at all, but it definitely grown on me, but still not among my favorite Pixar movies, that's for sure. Lightyear, I would probably put it right there. I'm also going to make a swap. I think looking at it, I'm going to put Brave down here, because I think Brave and The Good Dinosaur are just about on par. I think Luca is probably a little bit better than those two in some respects, but they're all close. Again, still, just to reiterate, those 3 are all still like 7 out of 10s for me. Like, that's the lowest I would give a Pixar movie besides Cars 2. Lightyear, it's tough because, you know what? I might actually put Lightyear down in super meh as well. I think Lightyear was good. It was, like, I just did my review for it. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen my review, which is a spoiler-free review, by the way. I gave it a 7 out of 10. I like the main idea for the story. I like the voice cast. I loved the characters, especially Socks. Definitely the all-star of that movie. The animation is probably the best that Pixar has ever done, but the plot is just like a glorified scavenger hunt. There's so many little conveniences. Some of the characters are so just, I don't want to say like stupid or dumb, but yeah, kind of like that. Just so clumsy and so clueless that they couldn't even be real people. There's just way too much slapstick comedy in here as well. And Zurg was totally underwhelming for me personally as a villain. So I was a bit let down by this one. Being such a fan of the first 3 Toy Story movies and enjoying Toy Story 4, I had high hopes for this one. I thought it looked great by the trailers and everything, but I was a bit let down, which sucks to say, but what can you do, right? They can't all be hits when you have 26 movies. Turning Red, I would honestly put Turning Red in Good as Gold. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but look, these are kids' movies, and they are meant to teach lessons, I think is really what Pixar always tries to do. And there were a lot of parents out there that were super angry, calling this movie like gross and inappropriate and stuff. The human body, ladies and gentlemen, is not gross. It is natural. It goes through these stages. It exists. This is how it works. So the fact that they took this idea of going through puberty, and really it's primarily about girls for sure, but there are some guys in there as well, and it puts it in this very easily digestible way for parents to teach their kids and for kids to learn, and I applaud them for that, for having the courage to make a movie like this, for telling the story the way they did, for giving us a cast of awesome characters. They are so lovable, they're so unique, they're so funny. I was cackling throughout this entire movie. I was laughing so hard. Also a bit biased because it's the first and I believe only movie set in Canada. I love the exploration of the Chinese culture, and I think the animation is a bit different. They definitely spliced in some anime, however you say it. They spliced in some elements of that in Turning Red as well. And again, it's super relatable for me. Like, I'm a bit older, okay? Like, don't get me wrong. I am in my early 20s. But I still remember what it was like to be in middle school or junior high, whatever you call it, wherever you're from. So I still relate to a lot of this stuff. I have a lot of fond memories and a lot of not so fond memories. Things I still have nightmares about from junior high and middle school. So I think they nailed it. I think they really got the heart of the movie. I think they delivered their message that puberty and things like that, and the changes that your body are going through. It's all natural. It's all normal. We shouldn't be ashamed about it. We shouldn't shy away from it. We shouldn't think it's gross or inappropriate. We should be teaching our kids about it. We should feel free to talk about it. We should be open about it. And I think Pixar nailed it here, and I will forever applaud them. Even if you didn't enjoy the movie as a movie, the messages that they're delivering to young children and to teens and preteens and things like that about our bodies and about what life is all about and what the changes we go through and things like that, good on them for doing it. I respect the hell out of them for it. And on top of that, I think they gave us an awesome movie. I laughed the whole way through. I love the idea. I love that it's set in Canada. I love the exploration of the Chinese culture. I love the overbearing mother played by Sandra Oh and things like that. I really did enjoy this movie so much. So that's my rant / praise for Turning Red. Up close to godlike. For whatever reason, when I first watched Up, I did not care for it at all. It came out, 2000, I want to say 9? I was in grade 5 when I first watched this movie, and I did not care for it at all. We watched it as a class, and I was like, this is boring, I didn't like it. And then I didn't watch it for years because I just had this memory of it that I just didn't really care for it all that much. And then when I finally went and watched it again, way later, I was like, I am such an idiot. Now Up is in my top 10 Pixar movies. I freaking love Up. It is so good. Not only does it have probably the most soul-crushing, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching opening of possibly any movie ever, but it's just such a beautiful tale. Not only does it have gorgeous animation and some really creative and imaginative ideas, it is just such a touching journey. And I love it. I really, really do. I think it has a great villain once again. I think, again, the visuals are something so different. And it's just like it's a house with balloons that flies away to some fairy tale land. And there's a giant bird, like dodo bird, weird looking thing. And you got talking dogs and all this other stuff. And there's this little kid that got trapped on his porch. And it's this grumpy old man. It shouldn't work. It is so weird and so different. But it does. It works on every level, and it hits all the right notes and all the right beats, and Up is definitely among Pixar's best. And now for WALL-E, it's in the same category as Up. When I first watched it as a kid, I thought it was boring. I didn't really care for it. Thought the animation was pretty and stuff like that. But as I grew up, again, it is one of Pixar's most unique and innovative ideas. It was something so different. For the first while of the movie, there's no talking. It's just two robots and stuff. And then it really just does dive, once again, like Pixar has a knack for, into some really darker and deeper themes that most other animation studios will just stay away from. Most other animation studios out there would rather just go make a kids movie. But they're talking about things like pollution and overindulgence and sucking up all of Earth's natural resources and all of these other things like obesity and things like that. There is just so much stuff crammed in here that kids will just sit there and mindlessly enjoy the movie, but adults will really, really be able to have a second look at. And again, it's if you want to talk to your kids about those things, WALL-E is a perfect example. You can be like, oh, whatever your kid's name is, just like they showed in WALL-E, right? And that's why we have to, eat our vegetables and things like that. And that's why we like to plant trees or something. I don't know, folks. I'm just spitballing here. But you know what I mean? There's just a lot of deeper, darker themes in here that are packaged in this not only adorable, but arguably the best looking animation in Pixar's catalog. I know I said best looking animation for Lightyear, but that's because it's the newest and it looks stellar. But WALL-E just has some of the most jaw-dropping and breathtaking shots in all of Pixar, so massive applause for them for that. So I figured why not do this as well, because I've seen a lot of other people do it in their tier videos. I'll do a ranking as well. So this first spot where Incredibles is right now will be the first place spot, then Monsters, Inc. will be second, third, fourth, fifth, so on, and it'll start over again here. So we have, 6 up in the godlike tier, then 7 will be right here where Cars is, all the way down to the bottom where Cars 2 is. I figured why not, right? We'll do something a little bit different. So we'll start off by putting Toy Story in that top spot. Of course, I'd probably follow that up with Monsters, Inc. Then I'd probably go like this. Maybe, it's a tough one. Finding Nemo, Toy Story 2, because I did really go on about how much I like Toy Story 2, but I really do like all of these top Pixar movies like this much. I'd probably go like this for now, and then I'd probably go, let's see, Up WALL-E Inside Out, Coco. I'd probably put Coco back here, and then I'd probably put Up maybe here. WALL-E probably stay there. Actually, Inside Out, I'd probably bump back a little bit further. It's tough because this could change, because I think the last two times I did my rankings, the one I did with Luca and the one I did with whatchamacallit, Turning Red, they were like completely different from one another. A lot of them switched places and I said different things. You'll look at this ranking now, and then if I do another Pixar ranking when the next one comes out, it'll probably look completely different from this as well. Like, this stuff changes on the fly all the time. Like, it's really, really, you know, I love Pixar, and every time I rewatch these movies, I get new things from them, so it's a close one. Next, I would probably go Bug's Life, just because of the legs, it has the longevity. Then I'd probably go... You know what? I'd probably go this. Maybe this. No, I'd probably go like this for the next few. So this would be your, what's this? Top 12 here. This would be like 13 right there. The next set, I'd probably go... Yeah, I'd probably say Toy Story 4, even though I have my gripes with it. I do feel it's a little unnecessary. I think that Finding Dory was just more of the same. Incredibles 2 was just a little bit of too little too late, a little bit of a letdown because the wait was so long. Cars 3 was probably one of the better Pixar sequels. I think it really did try to do the whole return to form thing, but didn't succeed in every aspect of that. Whereas Toy Story 4, I love the character so much that I can't just have a big dumb smile on my face throughout the entire thing. So Toy Story 4, I'd say, is probably the best of the bunch on that one. When it comes to these ones, I'd probably go Lightyear. I'd probably be more likely to watch than The Good Dinosaur. Probably more likely to watch than Brave again. Maybe more than Luca? No, I'd probably say I'd likely be more likely to rewatch Lightyear before Luca. Maybe Luca before Lightyear. Yeah, and then Cars is just by itself, so there's no need to switch that one at all. So yeah, Cars is at the rock bottom, and it's going to stay there when it comes to Pixar. So there you have it there, folks. There's my final ranking there. Once again, this top spot, number 1, going to Toy Story here. Then you work your way down, zigzag here. That'd be your number 6, and then going down to 7, so on, all the way down to the very bottom, 26, with Cars 2 at the very bottom, folks. Once again, my Pixar ranking changes absolutely all the time. I love all of these movies for the most part. Even The Good Dinosaur being right here in that 25th spot, everything from The Good Dinosaur up, including The Good Dinosaur, I'd probably still score like a 7 out of 10. Like, honestly, it's probably like this top row is like 10 out of 10. The next row is like 9 out of 10s. Then it's probably like 8s, 8.5s, 7, 7.5s. And then just Cars 2 is like a 5 out of 10. The rest are like 7s and above. I simply love Pixar. I've said it a million times this video. I adore Pixar, my favorite animation studio. I love the vast majority of their movies. And there you have it, folks. That is my tier list for every Pixar movie, as well as my current ranking, which again will likely change by the next time I decide to do one of these rankings of the sort. But regardless, folks, thank you all so much for sticking with me on this admittedly long journey. I have a lot to say about Pixar. I love these movies. So thank you so much for watching. And of course, as per usual, back to me. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with which tier I put each movie in. While you're at it, feel free to let me know where you would have put each movie and what godlike to not quite you'd like to see me do next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.